in our culture, we're so conditioned to looking at it as, oh my God, it's all downhill from here. And I think of this past summer, I went to Umbria, Italy, to an art center to do a mindful photography retreat.
Really?
And all the women, we were all women, there was just a small group, and they were all much younger than me. They were in their 40s, 50s. And so one of the very first nights we were together, this woman was complaining because she was about to turn 60 and her life was over. And I started to
Really?
laugh, and they looked at me, and I said, you know, guys, I don't even remember that long.
I don't remember what 60 meant.
That whole idea that somehow we can't still learn.
Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges, as he explores turning the page on his life and yours.
Hi there, and welcome to the next chapter with Charlie. Today we are chatting with Dr. Suzanne Eden, author of Healing from the Inside. Check out the subtitle, Living Fully as You Age, which is a delightful journey into a vibrant yet still realistic version of old age. Now, at 87 years old, Suzanne believes she is in better shape today, physically, mentally, and spiritually, than she was 30 years ago. I want to find out more. So let's get Dr. Suzanne Eden on the show. Suzanne, welcome to the next chapter with Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie. Thanks for having me. I'm delighted to share some of my experience with your audience.
Yeah, well, we had a wonderful chat. My audience all knows that I chat with 99% of my guests before the show. We had a delightful chat yesterday. Like half the time, I think we ought to record the chat, the pre-chat, because it was so good. You're so energetic and delightful to chat with. So you know what I think as I was looking at my notes, you know where I think I'd like to begin? I'd like to begin our show with the quote that I used above in the introduction. That you feel you are in better shape today at 87 than you were 30 years ago. Talk to me about that.
Well, that's my journey. That's the journey that brought me here. And it's not just that I think that or feel that. I know I am in better shape. I take very few medications. I rarely see a doctor. Um, I have the issues of aging. I don't have the energy I used to have. I can't walk like I used to love to hike. It's a great loss to me that I can no longer do that. But on the whole, I have the energy, I have still the passion to do the things that I really want to do. And so, in what I speak of so much in my book about taking responsibility, I do things that allow me to continue um, on my journey of doing things to serve other people. So I don't force myself to do what I can no longer do, but I really physically and certainly mentally, all of my life I have been plagued with dark times and
Hmm.
depressions. And now, if it's not that I don't ever get that, but what happens now is it doesn't stop me. It doesn't define me. I look at things whether it's physical, mental, or spiritual. I look at it and say, now, why is this happening? What am I supposed to learn from it? And
That's a
that
great.
makes all the difference.
It's funny. It's just funny. Before our chat, I was listening to a podcast with Steve Young, and if you're a football fan, American football fan, I'm
No.
going to tell everybody Suzanne is from Toronto or near Toronto in Canada. She's Canadian, so American football is not high on their list. But he was a great quarterback, and he had to overcome a lot of psychological barriers to get there. And he just says every day is about learning and growing. And he believed that as a young man, and he continues to believe that now. Into I think he's probably all of he may be 60, something like that. But that's interesting you would say that because learning and growing, and I feel the same thing in my life, is that I'm always learning and growing. And I think what's interesting, Suzanne, is I have people that watch me and tell me they feel that that's what keeps me so young, is my interest in learning, my curiosity. I'm either haunted or enhanced by my curiosity. I'm an incredibly curious person.
Well, I would say the same thing. I look back many years ago to when I had finished my doctorate. I'm a slow learner. I did my doctorate in my 40s. I had established a career before I got into doing my doctoral studies. And I had a choice to make. I could either I was working in education, and I had the chance of going into a high position in administration. And at the same time, I was offered a tenure stream position in a faculty of education, making less money. Certainly would affect pension and all of those realistic things. But there was no contest to me because, again, I saw administration as sitting arguing about things that make no difference. Where getting to a university and being in a position to continue to learn was where I wanted to be. And I just recently did a blog actually on that whole theme of that's how we keep our minds young. That's how we keep our brains going, is by learning. It's when we stop learning, when we sit back and just, absorb all the garbage that is thrown at us through the media, day in and day out. That's when our brains start to die, I think.
Oh yeah, that is such a wonderful observation because I am I have I watch the media to catch the headlines, and then I'll watch BBC, and they have this nice little thing at the bottom of BBC. It says breaking news and headlines, and that's pretty much all I pay attention to. And I say, well, I got my news for the day. I know what the headlines are. I don't need to see their interpretation of it because they just, it's all gets so negative.
Yeah. Well, my go-to for American news, and I'm sure that you're aware that Canadians are very much interested in what goes on around the world, and in particular right now what's happening in the United States. And my go-to is PBS. I trust them. I have for many, many years supported Toronto Buffalo PBS. And that's my news source. But we're kind of getting off the topic here.
Not really. This is helpful. There is no topic.
I don't watch regular news anymore, not Canadian nor American. It's just, as you say, it's an interpretation. We don't know anymore what's true and what isn't.
Oh
So
my goodness.
we have to go to the two or three sources that we believe we can trust.
That is that's and to not get so, for me, not to get so emotionally involved in what's going on. So that's my growth, is not to get emotionally involved in the news of the world. Because it's going to change daily. It's going to be one thing, it's going to change, with us, we'll get a new president maybe in the next election cycle, what is that, 2028, I think. And things are in flux. It's better to focus on making my life, having my life be meaningful, be purposeful and meaningful to me. And I think we both concur that it's purposeful and meaningful to the people around us. that we are serving people, that is the bottom line.
In my book, I have a whole chapter on purpose, and I define purpose as being a two-sided coin. And on the one side, it's becoming the person we're supposed to be. Why was I given this package of gifts and talents and experiences that makes me who I am? Why were you given a different one? What are we supposed to do with them? So that's the one side of purpose, and that's becoming who we're intended to be. But the other side is leaving the world a better place for having been in it. And that's the service piece. And to me, as we age, this is so much at the heart of living fully. As we become seniors, I think it's partly cultural. In fact, I know it's cultural, that we're looked on in our society, elderly people, seniors are looked on as, well, something to tuck away someplace out of the way. My friends tell me their grandkids at 4 know more about how to use the computer and the telephone than they do. That's okay, but we have a wisdom of lived experience, and we can make a difference still. I have a beautiful story in my book about my own father in his last few months of life and how he impacted. He was in a facility called a long-term care facility dying. He knew that. And yet he was able to bring life back to people who had given up. And it's a beautiful story, and it's not a big thing. It's not something extraordinary. It's who he was and his ability to forget about his own limitations and support others in finding how to continue on and make a difference. That to me is the heart of living fully.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's a big part of it. And I also like your idea of living who you were intended to be. And I have maybe a little adjusted take to that, but it may be exactly the same as you. But I don't wrestle with who am I intended to be as much as what gifts do I possess and what skills and talents that I've learned, but I've also have inherited DNA. What are those? I'm always looking at my strengths, what are my gifts? How can I use that? How can I do that? That determines who I'm intended to be. How I'm created, how I'm born determines that. I've yet to find a script on saying this is a script of who Charlie is intended to be. And yet that script is written in my heart. It's written in my mind. It's written in my spirit. What do you think?
Well, I think you are thinking of who you ought to be, because that's those gifts you were born with. Like, we're not just born as nothing. We're born with an intention, I think. And that intention often is lost as we experience various things in life, and we may make choices that aren't in our best good. But I think that it's the same thing, Charlie.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also think of someplace in the book I talk about when I do stuff with what I call my transformational journal. I talk about not building on your strengths, not what your lack is, not looking at it and saying, what do I need to change to be better, but rather saying, what are my strengths? I'm working on a supplement to my book right now that is a transformational journal, a guide to going through that process. But I look at that and I say, we don't move forward very well if we're looking backwards.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely
If we
true.
were trying to drive our car forward,
That's a nice statement.
Out the rear of the car, we're in trouble. And I think that's true with life. I think we need to be looking forward, what do I do well? And for a lot of my life, a lot of the stuff that I've had to heal is that inability to really understand what my strengths are. And that's where my transformational journal came in, because it was only when I began to really reflect and dig into my life, my experiences, my choices, that I saw that I had incredible strength. And I never thought that. All my,
Oh, really?
yeah. So it's a very interesting
When
process.
did that realization come upon you?
Oh, in the last half dozen years,
Really?
yes. Yeah.
That late?
And I did a piece, I've just done a piece for a magazine. I just sent it off this morning. They asked me to do a piece on my personal journey of healing. And so what I did, I didn't go into details about my personal life that I don't choose to share, but what I did was
Sure.
describe the process that I went through. And it was that discovery of my strengths that really started me on the path to where I am today.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have had, there's something about older age, and I've had, you say your last 6 years, my last 4 or 5 years have been, I think, I'm looking at because I'm in the decade of the 70s, my 70s. And I look at these as the greatest learnings of my life, the greatest learnings about me. And I've always been self-analyzing, always looking for who I am, what I'm created to be, what I'm about. But there are just insights into life, and just there's something, I think you just have to get old to get there. You don't find it even at 50. You think you found it, you think you found something, but this learning that I've had in the last 5 or 6 years, since maybe turning 73, 74, have just been enormous. And it's about the experience of old age.
Well, it's interesting to me because again, I go back to that idea of we're so in our culture, we're so conditioned to looking at it as, oh my God, it's all downhill from here. And I think of this past summer, I went to Umbria, Italy, to an art center to do a mindful photography retreat.
Oh, really?
And all the women, we were all women. There was just a small group, and they were all much younger than me. They were in their 40s, 50s. And so one of the very first nights we were together, this woman was complaining because she was about to turn 60 and her life was over. And I started to
Really?
laugh. And they looked at me and I said, guys, I don't even remember that long
I don't remember what 60 meant.
ago.
Yeah.
That whole idea that somehow we can't still learn. I did a blog called An Old Dog Can Learn New Tricks. And in that I address this issue of thinking that because we're old, our learning has to, it doesn't. It is.
Do you think when we get old, there are people that actually think that they think they can't learn anymore? I've never
Oh,
met
yes.
anybody.
Oh, I have. I
Have
see
you?
people all the time who don't ever really, they won't, for example, over the last 10 years when technology has been taking over our whole way of life, they've refused to go, oh, well, I don't want to learn that stuff and I can't learn that stuff. And somebody will come and help me. And so now all of a sudden, you can't even do banking now
Right.
unless you use technology. Yeah, I think we do. I think you do know people, Charlie. Sorry to tell you, but I think you know people who still don't learn.
I don't know a lot of people my age, to tell you the truth.
Well, maybe not. Maybe it's my age group. Maybe it's just, but
Maybe it is. Maybe there is a change.
yeah.
10 years, I look at 10 years, shoot, I just want to make it to 87, Suzanne.
Well,
That's my goal.
I say I never knew anybody who got this old before. When I was 80, when I turned 80, I had a birthday party for myself. I hadn't had a birthday party for many, many years. And I decided that that's what I would do. I'd give myself a party. And I have a family that's very close to me who are Icelandic, and they said they would come. And so I planned this whole party with people who are very special to me. And I honestly, I mean, I imagined if I could even get to 85, that was going to be something. So I don't even think about it now. I do imagine I might have 10 years though.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I have just started. Now you can coach me here because you've seen this movie. I am just now beginning to think about, okay, I have to get realistic. You know, I'm 76. I feel I'm in really good shape. I'm in good physical shape. I don't have any, I'm like in scary good shape for my age. And so I said, I can give myself 10 more years. But now I could be 20. I could be 20, but I will sort of plan around 10 and say, how do I make these a marvelous 10 years? And is there anything I need to do differently or the same? Maybe it's not do differently. Anything I want to be careful I don't stop doing. That I just, because of not the energy that I had and all. What do you think about giving myself that sort of how do I make this if it is the final 10 years? Which I have no way to project that. I have no idea. That could be 2 and it could be 25. What do you think about that?
Well, I think we have to stop thinking about the numbers. And truly, I don't think a lot about it anymore. I just go on, and I know that at some point, I know I have a much clearer sense of the finality of life than I ever had before.
Okay.
You realize because you look back. I just recently was on a Zoom with I call her the daughter of my heart, my friend in Iceland. And we were talking about them coming for my birthday, and we couldn't believe that it was 7 years ago. And I look at 7 years ago, I am going to be looking 100 in the eye at that point. So you become very aware of that. But it doesn't color my days, and it doesn't color my decision making, if you know what I mean. I still, I think twice about perhaps, well, let's use the example of the house. I'm in a condo, so I don't put money into things that are going to last for 20 years because I don't care about 20 years. I know I won't be here then. So maybe that money goes maybe towards getting tickets for a theater show downtown or something that's today, right? So I think that learning how to live to enjoy the day, that whole idea of living in the now, that's kind of a hard thing to do, and I've never quite understood how I do that. But I do understand what it means to enjoy today and to get up in the morning and instead of saying, oh my gosh, I've got that awful podcast or whatever, but looking at the day and saying, I wonder what interesting thing might come my way today.
Yeah, that's fun. That's nice. I think, I knew the reason we get along is because we think so similarly, because that is what I think. I think, I'm thinking there is a finality and so I have to start thinking about that. But I like your suggestion to just quit counting numbers. That's not important. And I'm big into, I do get living in the now. I do get being fully aware of when I'm walking around my neighborhood, trying to be fully aware just of the things that I see, 4 times a week, walking my neighborhood. and I think the people in my life and the love that I feel and what I'm trying to project, I I may at moments count the years, but I certainly don't live counting years.
I think that one of the things for me, and you asked me, um, I see. I'm not trying to be judgmental here of anybody, but I see people living on the surface, living on what I call autopilot. They're just putting in the days and they go through the same routines. And one of the things that's interesting to me is that I really have gotten away from having any patience with that. I think when you start to really look at that healing journey, that journey of finding out who you are at your best and what you can do still in your life to make the place a better world for other people. I think we lose patience with just living with no real purpose other than to get through the day. And
Oh,
that's a product for me that has been one of the gifts of aging. I talk about aging as a gift, and I do that very sincerely. I have some wonderful women friends who were not given that privilege. And
yeah.
they were women who looked after themselves, who were wonderful contributors to this world, and who died of cancer in their very early, 50s and even 40s. And
Yeah.
they didn't have the gift of getting old that I have. And that's the other thing that I do think about. Now, why was I given this gift and not my other friends?
Yeah, and I like what you're saying. It's not just twice, and now what can I do about it? It's less concerned about source as opposed to what we do. You know what I do annually, and I wrote about this in blogs, and I don't know if I've done a show on it. I can't remember. I don't think so, but I do, instead of New Year's resolutions, because they're gone in 7 days. I do annual themes. What is my theme for this year, and what do I want to live toward? And I'm going to create the actions daily. I don't know what actions are going to be, but the actions are created daily. And I have two themes. Typically I have one, but I have two themes. One is to experience wonder. It's a big thing in my life, is experiencing wonder. And the other is to live with kindness. Kindness is the biggest, I think it's the one legacy. If I have a legacy I would like to leave, and that is of kindness. And it's simply defined as being nice. Being nice to people, and being nice to your surroundings and to your world. And so I live into that. So those always, they're just kind of haunting me. They don't haunt. I mean, in a negative sort of way. They're just sort of instilled, and they're throughout my whole core of being is wonder and kindness. Um, any thoughts on that?
Well, yes, lots of thoughts on that. And
Ah,
because the one of the keys to living fully as you age is to I would say nurture your mind. And instead of harboring fear, emotions of fear and shame and regret and all of those negative things, transitioning into, and I talk about gratitude, but I love kindness. I love that notion, and I think that is probably closer to what I mean. But if we when we catch ourselves feeling those emotions, those negative emotions, if we stop and we think, for example, with gratitude, what's one lovely thing today, right
yeah,
now, this moment? What brings me joy?
yeah.
I look out my window at a beautiful ravine and trees and a milk
Yeah, you have a wonderful
and
setting you
birds
told me
and all
about.
that, and there's always something out there. kindness. Again, I tell a story in my book about when I was at my lowest point, when I took early retirement from the university because my health was so bad. I could hardly get out of a chair. And I
Yeah,
was,
that's what you're saying. That was in your 60s, is that
yeah,
right?
yeah, and my early 70s. And when I would get like that, all the dark thoughts come, and again, the thought of everything's gone. I'll never have the life again. No, I won't have the life I had before, but maybe I'm going to have a better one. And there are still possibilities. So I think that one of the things, as I started to say, when I was, one of the stories I tell when I was like that, I remember very clearly one morning waking up and thinking, I'm doing everything I possibly can to get myself better, and it's not working. And so maybe if I can't make myself better, maybe I can help somebody else. And I would, every morning I would think, okay, let me find some opportunities today to make somebody else's world a little bit better. And it was as simple as when I was shopping for groceries, telling someone how nice her hair looked today, or seeing a new mom with her baby in the carriage saying, what a lovely baby. Are you enjoying her? Just the simple little connections. I think it's connections. And that's where
Mm,
kindness comes in, isn't it?
nice word.
Because kindness is an act of connection. And boy,
Nice
we
word.
need that today. People are feeling on their own. They're feeling isolated. They're afraid of technology and what it's doing to our connections. When you see little kids who don't know how to say hello to you because they've got their device in front of them all the time, that's pretty scary to me.
Oh, yeah, I agree that that is the downside. That is the downside of technology, is it is so consuming that you are seeing the results in, what we call is it the Gen Zs or Gen Xs, or, the
Yeah.
young kids, the suicide rates, the depression, the not wanting to get married, not wanting to have children, and all of this, I think you can say one of the driving sources of that is technology, is they're just so involved with themselves. And that's what technology allows you to do. That kind of technology allows you to be involved with yourself. And it's got to go beyond me. If it doesn't go beyond me, Susan, you write or Suzanne, I'm sorry, you talked about a big thing you have adopted now is healing energy. That's a big aspect of yours, and we chatted quite a bit about that yesterday. Maybe you could describe healing energy, what that means to you and to us.
Okay, let me just step back for a moment.
Sure.
And our model of healing, not of healing, our model of health care is one that treats the body as if it's a machine. And this machine has parts that break down, that to stop functioning properly. And so the solution is to find a way to replace them. And that's what we call a cure. And every time you have a sniffle or your arm hurts or something, the first thing people will say to you is, have you been to the doctor? And it's as if by going to the doctor, we're going to find that replacement, that relief from the pain. And that's the mode I was in. And for many years, before I took early retirement, and in the first years after retirement, where I was focused on my physical health and trying to recover my life, that's what I was doing. And in my description in my book, I talk about the 3 stages of healing that I went through. And that was the first one, healing from the outside, where we go and we look for anything, and we look for the doctor, we look for the procedure. We looked for pharmaceuticals, medicines. We looked for all kinds of things, but all of them outside ourselves. And it's when we transition into understanding that there's a difference between that, finding a cure, and healing, that we begin to move on this truly into this journey of healing. And whereas the cure is from outside, it's something that's done to us, healing is something that comes, it's a process that goes on within our bodies. And we aren't a machine with different parts that you can just yank one out and stick a new one, yank out a hip and stick in a new one and all will be well. No, what we have to understand is the human body is a living organism. And as a living organism, each and every cell and system and part is part of the other. It's what I call one of a piece. Our mind has as much to do with our physical health as anything external. It determines so much of it, how we think and what we do. I do talk a lot about spirituality, maybe secular, in a secular sense. I talk about spirituality, but that's the deep part of self. And unless it's brought together, and that's where we have the need for meaning, for love, for purpose, for being seen and being understood. That's what I call the spirit. So all of those things work together as one, and our treatment, if we want to call it treatment, has to factor in all of that.
Yeah, I like that what you said about factoring all of it, because there is a place there certainly, as we know, is a place for meds and doctors and hip replacements and things. These are obstacles that get in the way of us living a whole life. And so we're removing an obstacle. We're not finding a whole life. We're removing an obstacle for us attaining a whole life so we can use all of our other facilities that you talked about.
It took me a very long time to understand that balance. And in my book, I'm not an extremist at all. What I wish for and hope, although it probably won't be in my lifetime, is that healthcare would take the best that science-based medicine provides us. And it's incredible. As a diabetic, I know that more than anybody. With the ancient wisdom of energy as healing. And that's where it comes from. And when you figure that for more than 5,000 years, energy healing has been an acceptable form of healing, of wellness, if you will. And yet we throw it out as if it doesn't mean anything. Science-based medicine is what, 200 years, maybe 300? But
maybe more like 100 or less,
but
to actually being there.
So I really advocate, and in fact, I use the example of diabetes to say when I need it, I use the conventional treatments. I don't know where I would be. I'm on an insulin pump. It's called an external pancreas. And it's incredible. I certainly wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't paid attention to my diabetes and used all the means I have at my disposal. But that's not the whole picture.
That doesn't make you vibrant. And
no, no, exactly. Exactly.
It's not, it just doesn't get in the way anymore of you being vibrant. There was a time where the diabetes could get in the way of you being vibrant.
Yeah.
But you mediate that.
But I look at this as the self-healing. It's not that we can just sit back and wait for our body to do whatever it's going to do. We have to do what we can to support it. And it isn't rocket science. It is diet. It is movement. It is breath work. It's those things. Now, this has moved away from what you asked me about energy healing. We are beings of energy. We know that. I'm far from being a physicist. And all I remember of physics in my high school days was pith balls and the experiments we did with those.
Well, you just
But
remembered more than I did.
but we are being, everything is energy. Tesla is reported to have said
Right.
that. If you want to understand life, you have to understand energy, that everything is energy. The trees are energy, the birds are energy, the rocks are energy. So energy healing is making use of the energy that we are part of as living creatures, and that flow of energy, which is believed to go through us through channels. Um, and I think one of the real angry things for me these days, when I lose it, is the mockery of that in our media. And you watch any television show where they have somebody who is doing some alternative kinds of things like the energy healing. It's wrong. Energy healing has a great deal to do with how we end up. And when I discovered that, I went to a doctor who does the network spinal analysis, which was my entry into it. But it's basically learning how to use your breath. Breath doesn't just bring oxygen, breath brings energy. And you want to direct that energy through your body to get rid of a lot of the toxins and the blocks of negative energy that stop us from being people, joyous people that we should be. We were not brought on this earth to all sit around and weep and moan. I don't believe that.
I find, yeah, absolutely not. It sounds like you are a follower of Eastern philosophy. It sounds very Eastern what you said, because I too, I follow the Tao is big in my life. I read the Tao daily,
I
and
don't pretend to be an expert. I love it. I wish that I had discovered this when I was much younger. And part of my motivation for writing this book was for people who are searching to find deeper way to live and a more purposeful way to live, to save them some of the pain and the hurt and the searing uh, wounds that I had to go through in order to get where I am today. I wasn't like this 40 years ago, 30 years ago, even 10 years ago.
do you think those pains were necessary in getting you where you are now,
Well,
or contributed at least? I don't know about necessary, but contributed.
I believe so. As I say, I think that's where the learning is. I was brought up in a very uh, um, traditional Catholic family, and
Hmm.
I carry those beliefs, some of those beliefs. I don't carry all of them with me today, but I've moved away from that, and but I believe that there is a power much more uh, beyond what we can see or feel or understand with our rational mind that leads us. And so I don't look back and think that my healing journey is to repair a broken self, but to open up a way to get the best self out.
Oh, wait a minute. You just said a nugget there. That's it. That's a nugget. I'm gonna wrap up the show with that nugget, because that's really wonderfully stated, Suzanne. We're not to repair a broken self, but to
Open up.
open up to the opportunities that we have. And
Yes.
that's what in your book, in your book that I haven't had a chance to read, that I'm looking forward to taking a look at it, healing from the inside. That's what you show us how to do. Is that correct?
Yes.
Wonderful. Suzanne Eden, thank you so much for spending time with me today. You've been a delightful guest.
Can I just say that I have a website?
Oh, I've got it on. Yeah,
Oh,
you can say, but go ahead and say it.
it's
There's a link on the notes.
and that I do a blog every couple of weeks that takes different phrases and ideas and sections from my book and elaborates on them. I also have on there, I'm starting to do a series of conversations with Suzanne, and the first one is with a very close friend who is in their last days with stage 4 cancer. And we did a chat together on what the final journey has meant to her and how she has negotiated it with such dignity and hope.
Oh, that's wonderful. And your website is SuzanneEden.com, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes, it's very, very simple. I have a click here on the note so people can get to it, but I really want them to check out your website and your book.
Thank you very much, Charlie. It's been a delight to talk to you.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone for tuning into the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.